Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, the podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. And we are here again to record another episode of this show that I love to do so much. And we're starting a new movie today. We finished up a few weeks back, Return of the Jedi. We've got an episode of that dropping this week, Chapter 5. We've got Chapter 6 dropping in another couple weeks down the road. And then we did the wrap-up show with David and Timothy from As Father and Son. So we've got those episodes still coming out. But we're going ahead and recording. We're keeping this train moving. So tonight we're going to jump into the Phantom Menace, which is going to be a really fun time as we get into the prequel era of our canon study. And we're going to kick that off with a really awesome guest that I'm really excited to talk to. But before we get to that, as always, we just have a couple of little housekeeping things for those of y'all that are watching live. T-shirts are always on sale. T-shirts are sometimes not on sale. If you want some Podcast of the Wills T-shirts, what we have done as Pete and I continue to develop the ATG Cast brand and combining our shows into that one stream, we have moved our Podcast of the Wills shirts over to the ATG Cast TeePublic. So because I uploaded all those, I think yesterday, they're on sale for a couple of extra days. So if you need a Podcast of the Wills shirt, go check that out. Go grab it. Pete's got some new designs up there that are really fun. One of even relates to our conversation on Friday night during Streaming Star Wars with Terry Peters from Yahoo, as she talked about her experience going to Galactic Star Cruiser last week and the article she wrote about that. And that was a really fun conversation. So go back and check out Streaming Star Wars if you missed that, and then go check out that merchandise. The other thing I wanted to mention, and you will be hearing much more about this from me in the coming weeks, is we have signed on with about 55 or 56 other content creators to support the Amidala Initiative. And if you've seen this on Twitter already, I hope you will follow that feed. I hope you will stay on top of that. This is a group of creators who have come together to rally our support. I think you're going to see a GoFundMe that will drop tomorrow to support all of the trans kids in our country who are being affected by all this horrible legislation that's going on in Texas and Florida and all these other places. So we're working together to come up with ways to promote the GoFundMe, to promote, to create awareness for, these people who are people, regardless of how they identify. And so Podcast of the Wills, ATG Cast, we're proud to be a part of the Amidala Initiative, and we will continue to be sharing that out, tweeting that out, getting people involved, because it's a cause that's very worthwhile. Because people are people, and people deserve to be loved, whoever they are. So keep watching for that, and I hope you will support that in some way. But tonight, we are going to get into a fun conversation, and I'm excited to bring on my guest. My guest tonight is Peter Townley. If you're any kind of Star Wars fan, you know Peter because he was one of the original hosts of the Star Wars show back when it got started and rolling. He's been involved with that over the years. He's also an actor. One of my favorite things about Peter is also that he's a farmer, and he took his turn at some point and said, you know what, I'm going to go be a farmer. I'm going to go, raise things and grow things and do cool farmer stuff. So I'm going to bring on Peter, and we're going to talk certainly about that, but also after we get to talk to him a little bit, we're going to get into the Phantom Menace. So it's my great pleasure to welcome to the show, Mr. Peter Townley. Peter, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm really excited to hang out this afternoon, and I appreciate you being willing to join me.
Yeah, of course.
Before we get into our study, which is kind of the key focal point of what we want to do, I do want to give people a chance to get to know you a little bit better. So kind of give us a generic, who Peter is, how you got involved with Star Wars, certainly with Star Wars show. Just give us kind of the 411 on Peter.
Geez. Well, I was a kid who grew up on a very hot, dusty farm in California.
Sounds like somebody else we know.
Yeah, it's just, and so yeah, I would, when I saw Star Wars, I was able to very easily see myself in it right away.
No doubt.
And I spent my childhood, like Luke did, and like I think George Lucas did, because Tatooine is also Modesto. Sort of wondering what else was out there for him,
Right.
And so I got out of my small little town, and I went to college, lived in Southern California for a while, have kind of sort of been all over the place. I've worked in I've worked in conservation. I've worked in agriculture. I was an actor for a little while. I'm, as it turns out, a farmer again these days. So yeah, it's always hard to say where life is going to take me next, but this is where I am right now, is sort of back in the place where the story started for the moment.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, tell us a little bit about your Star Wars origin story. I know that, you certainly grew up relating to Luke Skywalker as somebody who lived in a desert and on a farm and that kind of thing. But when did you see Star Wars first? What do you remember about those specific experiences?
The funny thing is that I don't actually remember when I first saw Star Wars.
Okay.
The first time I remember seeing it, I don't know if it's the first time I saw the movie or not. It was at the birthday party. I believe it was the 7th birthday party of a kid that I knew, a kid that was several miles away. So this would have been like 1983, 1984.
Okay.
And so nobody owned a VCR.
Right.
You went to the store, you rented the VCR, and you rented the tape. And
exactly.
So
it came in a little briefcase.
Yeah. His parents had rented a VCR and Star Wars for his birthday, and we were watching it on probably like a 13-inch CRT television. And I remember my parents came to pick me up, and the trench run was happening. It's like, it's the climax of the film, and they're like, "We got to go home." And I was like, "But I was like, but I want to see how it ends." And my mom or dad was just like, "You already know how it ends." So either I had seen the movie before, or just by being a kid growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, I already knew everything about the movie, whether I'd seen it or not. But that's the first time I remember watching Star Wars, was at that birthday party.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, it went from there, and you grew up with it, and you had experiences, I'm sure, as a kid playing Star Wars, and it, like everybody else did, either burying those figures somewhere in your backyard, never to be found again, or freezing a Han Solo in an ice cube tray because that was the carbonite we had available to us.
Yeah, the classics.
Yeah, at the time. So, well, that's awesome. And then you grow up, you do all these different things, you become an actor, you work, and you get to work on the Star Wars show. You were one of the first hosts of the Star Wars show. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what happened was that I'd moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was I had a couple of part-time jobs, one of which was that I was an actor, which it's like a stage, very occasional TV or film thing, little small projects, but mostly like commercials, in the tech sector for the most part. My agent sends me an email one day, and she says, "Hey, Lucasfilm is looking for somebody for some web content, and they want everyone we submit to just write a little paragraph about what Star Wars is to you. Like, what is your experience with Star Wars? What does it mean to you?" So I probably wrote way too much because I just had way too much to say. And I got called into audition. There was a total of I did a total of 6 auditions. I ended up doing like 2 newsread auditions and and I think 3 different like interview type auditions. And it was like there were 3 auditions, and then I heard nothing for a really long time because I think The Force Awakens came out, and it was just all hands on deck for that. And then I ended up running into the producer, Scott Bromley. I ran into him at a comedy festival. We were both seeing Maria Bamford. And he said, and I just saw him in the lobby. He was like, "Hey man, I think this thing might be coming back, and I'm gonna get in touch with you again. And so, like, yeah, a few weeks later, I ended up doing like 3 more auditions. It was so funny because, like, I felt like I really had the job because I was just doing an improv bit. I dropped a couple of phrases in Mandoa that I knew from the Republic Commando games.
Nice.
And like Scott like called Mad Martin in, like, you got to listen. You like
this guy's one of us.
This guy. So
I love that.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Well, and surely that sets you apart from somebody else who's just looking for a hosting gig.
Maybe, yeah. Certainly, I was probably one of the biggest nerds that auditioned for the job. But yeah, I ended up doing that for the first season of the show. I got to go to a Star Wars celebration, which I'd never been to before, in London, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, got to do some fun, like, little, like, remote type things, like go to the Sonoma Raceway and like try to answer trivia questions going 100 miles an hour or whatever. We got to do a lot of cool stuff. It was a really fun little gig, and getting called in on subsequent seasons just for sketches or something like that now and then. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it is one of those, for people of a certain age, or maybe even people of any age that have a fandom of any kind, to then get the opportunity to work in that fandom, to work in something that you love, on a lot of different levels, certainly has to be special and add kind of a different element to it. I haven't gotten that opportunity yet, so I just make it up myself at home on a weekly basis in my garage, as do all the other Star Wars podcasters and YouTubers and whatever it is that we do. Nobody asked me to talk about it, so I'm just going to do it anyhow.
I like that.
Hey, you know what? See what you want and go after it. Well, that's really cool. And then we have to touch on this because it recently has become certainly a kind of a part of your identity, especially sometimes when you put things up on Twitter. You're back to farming. You ended up back in the farm zone. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, I'm back on the cattle ranch just because, there's just sort of my family just needs me right now.
Sure.
And so I'm back up here. It's winter time, which means I'm feeding the cows, every day and that kind of thing. And it's a big ranch. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things to repair, a lot of new things to build. It's been, so let's see, I've been back since like fall 2020.
Okay.
So I've been back for a minute now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's been nice to just, really be outdoors, as they say on Twitter, touch grass.
Absolutely.
Again.
Yeah. Well, and that was going to kind of be my follow-up question, because you do still have something of a Twitter presence. You pop in and out of things on occasion.
Yeah.
But, it is also one of those things that, like, it has to be really grounding and therapeutic to be able to go. And, we all have these moments of feeling this way. If I have a weekend where I'm doing yard work, or right now I'm in the process of building a new playhouse for my kids in our backyard, and getting out and spending the day doing physical labor and being in the sunshine and not looking at my phone every 5 minutes and not getting wrapped up in somebody's bullcrap argument that they're having about something that's not real in a space that's also not real. It probably has to be, even though you're fulfilling family obligations and doing something like that, that's an important, it also has to feel good to kind of have that space to breathe and to have that opportunity to unplug from, some of that other nonsense that happens in the world.
It is really nice to just be able to kind of slow down a little bit, because you're, when you're doing farming and ranching, you're really on nature's clock. There's so many things that are out of your control,
right?
And it's so much clearer that this is the case, because this is the case for everything all the time. Most of what happens You know what's funny is I'm replying to a chat comment.
Yes.
My dad is why I haven't seen Yellowstone. My dad is watching it right now, and he calls me up every once in a while to discuss the accuracy of it. Like he's like, you would not believe what they did this week.
That's amazing. Yeah, Michael in the chat said Peter is living his own Yellowstone. That I had that thought earlier too. So that's
one thing that they did get right on the show is that there was a thing about elk that elk calves are born without any smell, so wolves cannot find them easily, and so the mothers tend to leave the calves alone and kind of wander away from them to attract predators away from the calf. And that is we have elk around here.
Yeah,
that is actually true. Yeah,
that's cool. That's really awesome. Well, Michael is a host of his own show, and they do recap episodes for Yellowstone, so maybe one day you'll have to be his real world expert and find out.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to watch it and see. That's
what right. You can get connected in there and be his source. Well, that's awesome. Well, we're going to transition here in just a minute into our canon study, but before we do, I'm gonna ask you two questions. The first one is more just kind of Star Wars in general. The other one will relate to our study. I love asking my guests who have any kind of Star Wars fandom who come on the show and hang out, because kind of the angle of the show is we treat Star Wars like a sacred text. It's something, I always joke it's a Bible study, but instead of the Bible, we're using Star Wars. So using that kind of spiritual lens, has there been a time? Has there been an experience? Has there been a moment in your Star Wars life where you had a Star Wars spiritual experience? Maybe some moment where it hit you in a way that was bigger than just a movie. It felt, it felt spiritual in some way. Can you put your finger on a moment like that?
It really is when I was a kid. Okay. That is when Star Wars meant the most to me. Sure. And it's really just my favorite scene in any Star Wars thing. It's just Luke looking out into the sunset. You just know exactly what he's feeling at that moment. The music hits in a really particular way. And you have the jumping off point, not only into the movie, but just into what all of Star Wars is right in that moment. And, being a kid and feeling really small and just in the middle of nowhere and seeing someone look off and they don't even realize, the adventure that's waiting for them. Right. That was kind of it was something that as a kid, it always made me feel like there was something more out there for me. And that gave me just so much hope. It means
I really love that. Yeah. I really love that. And I think that I relate to that in a very specific way as well, because I was born in 78. So I grew up with Star Wars. I didn't see the first ones, as a little kid, but I remember seeing Return of the Jedi in the back of my parents' station wagon at a drive-in movie theater. Like that was my first theater experience, theatrical, but watching the movies as a kid, exactly that moment. And when I was a little kid, I really just thought it was cool. And yeah, there were lightsabers and blasters and spaceships later on in the movie, but something about that moment stood out to me. And I'm sure it was, like you said, the striking nature of the suns and the wind blowing his hair and the music sting. I mean, I can't go anywhere in my life without thinking about that music sting on random moments and just kind of getting that same chill, that same excitement. Yeah. But then when I fast forward to when they did the special editions in 97 and they put them in the theaters, I went and saw it then. And at that point, I was a senior in high school, or I had just graduated and was headed to college. And that moment hit me in exactly what you're talking about. I was older. I mean, I still didn't know what I was talking about. I was 18 years old, but I saw that. And it hit me in that moment of his whole future's in front of him. And of course I had seen the movie, so I knew what that feature and adventure was going to be. But even though I grew up in Selma, Alabama, not the desert in, California that felt more like Luke Skywalker and Tatooine, I felt like I related in that moment of I'm heading off to something else. There's more in front of me. There's something to look forward to. And that every time I've seen it then, as I've continued to be a grown-up and have jobs and have kids and all the other things that go on in my life, I always come back to that's where it started. And you get to a point in life where you look up at how complicated life is, how busy things are, everything you have. And sometimes you want to look back to that Luke moment where you go, man, wasn't it great when I just got to stand and look at the beauty of this and hear, you know, the song. So to me, that's a very, very powerful moment and a very, very worthy spiritual experience, is to witness that moment and to have it impact you in that way. I love that a lot.
Yeah, man.
So the other question, as we head into our study, we're kicking off the Phantom Menace. So the question for you is, what were your first Phantom Menace experiences? Seeing that, the hype around it, you know, what stage you were at in your life. Kind of give us your firsts with Phantom Menace.
So in 1999, that was my last year of college. We're almost the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really incredible that there was going to be a new Star Wars.
Star Wars. Yeah.
For me and all my friends who were born between 1977 and 1979, it was just like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Can you believe there's going to be a new Star Wars? And so, there was all this hype. There were all these products. We probably, you know, like on our dorm room style, like 1999 version of the internet, you know, like probably, you know, in a window like this big, you know, seeing the, you know, watching the trailer over and over again type of thing. You know, there was a lot of anticipation for it. And yeah, like I went to see it with my girlfriend and I believe my friends Mike and Sam. And I think it was the four of us. We went to see it the morning after it opened at like 10 a.m. And I was going to school at UC Santa Barbara. So it was in Santa Barbara, California.
Right.
And so the theater's almost empty. There was probably like a dozen people there because it was 9 a.m, you know, the morning after opening night. There was like, it was, man, the thing that, and this is something that people who are younger now may not necessarily remember, is that like people sort of act like, oh, everyone's so politically correct now, and it's just like, that's not new. That's like when we were kids, there was the big like moral panic about music and movies and stuff in the 80s and early 90s.
Yes.
And that also led into when we first started using the phrase political correctness in the early 90s. I remember that being a big thing in the Clinton administration. Yes, and so much of our pop culture, especially like the MTV stuff, like Dennis Leary's entire career was all based around like punching hole. Like PCU was one of our favorite movies in college. You know, it was all about punching holes in that. People were really, really skeptical of it then too, just as they are now. But like, you know, we went and saw the Phantom Menace, and it was a very quiet car ride back because we were all so confused about what we had just seen.
Correct.
You know, we're all kids who grew up with Star Wars, and like after about 10 minutes or so, I think it was my friend Mike who broke the silence, and he just said, I wasn't expecting there to be so many racial stereotypes in Star Wars. Like even us who were very jaded about the whole political correctness thing, whose whole sense of humor was largely based around being inappropriate, you know, that going to like Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Film Festival and watching like that pilot episode of South Park that they showed at it. Like even we were just like, isn't it kind of weird that there were like Asian accents? And like my friend Mike, he's just like, I'm Jewish and Italian, and I don't know which half of me is offended at the auto mechanic.
Exactly. Like, between the Trade Federation guys and Watto, we're just going, what is happening?
It's just like, wait, how did this happen? Yeah, and like, and I mean, when you read reviews of the film at the time, critics were really bewildered by this too.
Absolutely.
And like Jar Jar was this very, very, very divisive thing. Because a lot of people were just like, what the F is like, what is this? you know, and like,
were we somehow punked? What is going
on?
on?
Yeah, like, are you kidding me in the wrong way, you know? But just like, yeah, you know, that was, you know, it's something that's for children. He kind of based the character on Goofy, but unfortunately, Goofy is also based on some very harmful racial stereotypes. And so that kind of comes out in that character. And unfortunately, Ahmed Best kind of got thrown under the bus because people like blamed him for that as if that was his fault. And
guess what? He didn't write that. He showed up and did what he was told.
He was like 23 years old or something.
Yeah, he was excited to have a job in Star Wars.
Yeah, you know, it's so like, yeah, the Phantom Menace was at the time it was really confusing because not only like were we not expecting the kind of Star Wars movie that we got, because it's a very different one. George Lucas had a lot of different ideas about what he wanted to do with the prequel trilogy, and we didn't understand that at the time. But also, like, you know, this will get us into talking about it. Like the Rick McCallum quote about Star Wars that gets used a lot is, "It's so dense." It's so dense.
So dense.
And it's like the Phantom Menace is, in fact, very, very dense.
It absolutely is. And that's the perfect segue.
It's a very dense text, and it's hard sometimes to make a whole lot of sense of it when you're watching. It was like in the theater, it's just kind of like too much information.
Right.
I think. Because when you slow down and really go through it, if like, I think the way I put it to Scotty was like, to really understand the Phantom Menace, I hope you got a B in AP US history, because like there's like a lot of the stuff that you have to know in the real world to understand what's going on in Phantom Menace is not like, it's not something a 7-year-old is really going to get. They're just going to like Jar Jar and spaceships.
Yeah, they're going to like the fact that one animal farts, and
exactly.
That's what it's there for.
Yes.
And so, well, and I think that's such a great point, and that creates the perfect transition into, you know, this canon study idea. But it's another one of those things. And I'm like you, like I left after I saw it the first time and I was like, that's not what I thought I was getting. Like in my dorm room, same way. We had the T1 computer access. And so, you know, as we're downloading, you know, the trailers, and like, I remember leaving the QuickTime thing up all night so that it would slowly download, so that when the bar was full, I knew I could actually play it and watch it. And, you know, we had the hype and we had the buildup because we didn't have the version of the internet we had now. Instead of Twitter, we had AOL Instant Messenger, where we could get in fights with each other because there was no tone to it.
Yeah.
But even for the moments, you know, from that, you know, why are we talking about trade routes? Why are we talking about, you know, sanctions and all these other things? And for the people that pitched a fit about it, you also have to stop and remember that's what George Lucas does. That's what George Lucas did in the 70s with Star Wars. He's talking about Vietnam. He's talking about, you know, imperialism. Like, he's talking about other real world things, but the real world changed in the 20 something years since the last time he had done that. So he updated it, and it became, you know, again, other historical real world, you know, connections and one-to-ones. And if you go into it thinking, you know, a lot of people didn't come to Star Wars looking for commentary, and it turns out there's commentary there anyhow. You know, they just want to show up and have bad guys get shot. Well, that's the good thing. You're going to get that too. But if you only expect it to be one thing, which is a great lesson about Star Wars and Twitter in general, if you expect it just to be one thing, you may be disappointed, because there's a lot more there than just that one thing.
Yeah.
You know, of course, that becomes much more of a conversation eventually when we get to the sequel movies. And, you know, I mean, I love, and I will unapologetically go on and on at some point about The Last Jedi, because I love the narrative stuff in The Last Jedi. And I mean, it's in the trailer. This isn't going to go the way you think. And the whole movie is built on the fact that what you think this is not what this is. That works in the movie. That works in real life. Like, there's so much there. And that's why I think that movie is so brilliant, is just the meta narrative that's running underneath all of it, telling sweaty nerds like me, hey, you need to take a chill pill, because it's not all about you.
Yeah. And I mean, that's, you know, it's one of the funny things too, is that, you know, all the sequel outrage, it's just like, and it's just like, I'm not a big fan of the sequels either, but it's also just like, yeah, I've done this already. I did this. I did this in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like,
that's right.
I'm not going to blow my stack over this. I learned my lesson 20 years ago.
Turns out I've got other things going on in my life to be mad about.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. Let's jump into Phantom Menace. Our text for this episode was about the first 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, I'm actually going to say 22 minutes is where we should end it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I will take it. The first question we always ask with our sacred text is, what is the text telling us? And I always couch this kind of as the literal interpretation. What are the things that you see kind of literally in these moments that we're looking at?
Yeah, and there is, there is a lot of literal in the text of this. And it's interesting also talking about his text, because the first minute or so of any Star Wars film
is actual text.
Is just text.
Yes.
Because like for episode 1, it actually gives a lot of information in the opening crawl.
It does.
A lot. But again, you gotta try and read it a little bit closely, because the words are all chosen very, very carefully.
Right.
And it doesn't start at the opening crawl. It starts at the first piece of text in the movie is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
So what Star Wars lets you, and Star Wars is letting you know right away that this is a fairy tale. This is the way that fairy tales start.
Yes.
Once upon a time in a faraway land. So, and Star Wars also, by doing that, by taking something familiar and slightly changing it, it kind of lets you know, in a way, this is how you watch the movie. The movie is going to have things that are familiar to you. It's a fairy tale. So there's going to be kings and queens and scary monsters and knights and wizards and and secret destinies and all that stuff. Like that's the kind of movie we're going to be watching. It lets you know to look for the things that are familiar. And the next piece of text is episode 1. So it's also this is a prequel. The movies that we have already seen are 4, 5, and 6. So the movie is also letting you know that, okay, this isn't the first in a series. We're going back in time. So you're going to need to know things from 4, 5, and 6 in order to understand this movie. It's a prequel. There can't be a whole lot of surprises. It's the setup for the things that you already know.
But at the same time, and I think the interesting thing with that is, let's say I've got a 5-year-old. For my 5-year-old, it's not a prequel. Like, it's just a movie, because unless you have the context of 4, 5, and 6, a prequel isn't a thing. It's just the first one. Yeah. And so that's something that I come back to on occasion, is if you're born past a certain period of time, even if you were born, after, Revenge of the Sith came out, their 6 movies have always existed. So it's really not a prequel if you just go, oh yeah, that's the first one. And then they only become sequels after that, which is kind of a funky way to look at it. But
you didn't necessarily, you didn't necessarily see 4, 5, and 6 first if you were born after 1999 or even shortly before. It becomes a weird other, in between with it. And so to kind of tag along to your point, there's one way to look at it and go, these are prequels. Yeah. But there's another way to look at it where it says episode 1, where it's just telling us this is a beginning. Yeah. The movie is largely incomprehensible if you haven't seen the original trilogy, though.
Right.
Because so many moments in the film are like revealing a familiar character. And like that moment is not going to mean anything to you if you've never seen another Star Wars.
You're not going to, it's not going to pay off for you unless you watch 5 more movies.
Exactly. And so we get the title, The Phantom Menace. First sentence of the opening crawl is, turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. So most of what we know about what happens before that original trilogy comes from a single monologue by Alec Guinness in Star Wars.
Right.
Where he's, for 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Yep. So it's letting you know this is that time.
This is that Old Republic.
It is the Republic, and it is called the Galactic Republic. And we know that the Jedi were the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. So this is a very large government. It's big enough to where it's called the Galactic Republic. It doesn't have any other qualifiers or names to it. It's just the government.
It's the one.
Yeah. And turmoil has engulfed it, as in pretty much an entire galaxy, all of civilization is in a really bad way right now. Our next sentence is, famously, the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Okay, so the turmoil is due to a dispute that's going on. And our dispute is the taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems. Okay, so we have a republic. Mm-hmm. So this republic is made of star systems, and some of them are outlying. They're on the periphery, which means that there must also be star systems that are closer to the center.
Right.
And there are trade routes that go between the periphery and the center. So if, again, we remember our, taking history in high school, mm-hmm. This is essentially imperialism. This Correct. Is how it works. You have mm-hmm. a core of highly developed nations or states, or this is a republic. So, your planets, your systems would be kind of like the states or provinces. Mm-hmm. And you have those at the center, and then you have resources that are being brought in from the outside, usually in the, maybe in the form of raw materials to be refined, et cetera, et cetera. And then goods also go the other way, but those tend to be probably more luxury items. It's kind of a losing proposition if you're in one of the outlying systems. It's not, being in the outlying systems kind of sucks. You're getting exploited by the people you're getting exploited by the people who are at the center. So the taxation of trade routes to those outlying systems is what's in dispute. So taxes on trade are most commonly tariffs, mm-hmm. which we got real familiar with from 2016 to 2020, because this was a big foreign policy issue, especially with China. This idea that there was a trade imbalance, that we were getting that we were getting a bad deal, the worst deal mm-hmm. anyone's ever seen.
Right.
And so this is apparently the sort of dispute that is going on. Whether it may be one part of the republic is getting taxed and thinks that these are too high. Another part mm-hmm. of the republic is going, we need this taxation because all of the profit is simply going too far in one direction.
Right.
So the next sentence is a very long one. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly starships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. This is maybe the densest sentence in the entire opening crawl. This is where the most information is.
That's right.
So, in this dispute, the major player is the Trade Federation. This is a tricky name, right? Because you've got a federation, they're a form of government, and trade, they're also some kind of business. Which at first we kind of go, well, how does that? They're a government, but they're all. There is a historical precedence for this, actually. A lot of the politics of the Phantom Menace, which is a movie about politics,
correct,
reminds me of the history of the late 19th century, kind of mm-hmm. the peak of the Age of Empires leading up to World War I, which was kind of the thing that ended that. And one of the reasons that the British Empire was so prosperous is all of the trade that they did with India.
Right.
And the English government itself wasn't involved in the governance of India. What mm-hmm. they had a charter with a company called the East India Trade Company.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
The East India Trade Company moved mm-hmm. all of these goods between India, an outlying area of the British Empire, to the core, to England itself. And they had exclusive rights to move things between India and England. And also, they were in charge of governing India. They basically ran the territories of Britain in England. There were guys who were governors of the four regions of India. And one of them was a guy whose job was to communicate directly to the crown, to the executive commander, the king. Viceroy is what you call the person who has that position. That's
right. The viceroy. Yeah.
So trade federation, we could, it's just like, okay, so maybe something like the East India Trade Company. They've got their own military, they've got their own system of government, and they are responsible for a large amount of the prosperity of the republic. And the adjective we're given for them is greedy. So what they are up to has to do with the profit motive. This dispute all has to do for them with the bottom line. So what they have done is they have stopped all shipping to this small planet, Naboo. And what they are doing is they are hoping that stopping shipping to the planet with a blockade of deadly starships. Damn. Okay, so a blockade is not just an embargo or a boycott. A blockade is an act of war. A blockade is when you surround something in order to prevent anything from going in or out, and you are enforcing that by use of arms. It is simply if you blockade someone with a navy or an army, you have essentially you've thrown down the gauntlet. You've already declared war. So this is a very big deal. We're kind of at they're hoping to resolve the matter simply by Naboo is described as being small. The Trade Federation is probably very large.
Sure.
This already is going badly for Naboo at the start of the movie. We're finally on to the next sentence. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events. Okay. So the Republic has a Congress, much like we're familiar with. But we know this is a galactic republic. This Congress must be freaking huge. Yep. This must be thousands and thousands of representatives who are expected to agree on things enough to get them done. And so they are endlessly debating this. But what they're debating is the chain of events, not what's going on.
Right.
They're mad at each other over whose fault it is.
Correct.
They're arguing. They're not. The subject of their debate isn't even what's going on in Naboo. It's how did this? Okay, it's your fault.
How did this happen?
Because you were the one who proposed the No. It's actually your fault that this happened.
Right.
That's the kind of thing. They're mad at each other, and so this situation is going on, and they're not doing anything about it.
Sounds a lot like a certain United States Congress I'm familiar with.
Well, that's the thing is that it's notoriously everyone's just like you can't get anything done, and that's with hundreds of congressmen. With thousands, wow.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Chancellor, so we have an executive commander, we have a chancellor, much like you would in a parliamentary government, and he's given the superlative of supreme. So this is a chancellor who wields a considerable amount of power, I would imagine, is what we're being led to believe. So what he's done is he has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights. Secretly is a very important word here.
Yes, it is.
He has not told anyone that he's doing this. It's possibly something that he's not supposed to do. That R2 noise was my phone going on.
That's okay. Mine makes the same noise. That's why.
I saw you looking down, so I figured it would. Yeah, I figured you might have thought that was it. The Supreme Chancellor has done this, and he's doing this clandestinely, and he's dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, as once again calling back to Obi-Wan's monologue, "The Guardians of Peace and Justice in the Galaxy," to settle the conflict. He's sending 2 guys. Into a war zone.
Yep.
Telling them sort it out.
Yep. Go figure this out.
Okay. Wow. So he's sending 2 guys to go sort the entire situation out. Interesting. Like, what? So our Supreme Chancellor doesn't have any faith in our Republic's Congress either.
Right.
And also, he's sending 2 guys with swords who have psychic powers to just settle it.
Yeah.
Which already sounds a little bit threatening.
Correct.
We're being told they're the guardians of peace and justice. But the thing that they're being sent to do doesn't necessarily... What does... I guess maybe peace and justice in the fact that there's, a blockade going on. But, like, they're being sent to settle a bill.
Yeah.
It's like, go down there and, tell them, make them see reason,
Make them an offer they can't refuse.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so when things are finally going, yeah, exactly. The Senator, what was his name? Senator Greebleeps or what?
Yeah, Greebleeps.
Yeah. Yes.
That's exactly it. The ETs were always disagreeable.
That guy. It's always about the M&Ms with him. It's the only thing he cares about in any piece of legislation.
Then he'll vote, but you gotta pay homage
in there. Yeah,
that's right.
So yeah, when we finally get to our first sequence, and it's really great because this opening crawl has given us all the information we need. We see a ship approaching a planet that has all these big warships around it. We know exactly what all of these things are. Oh, here's the ambassadors going to this planet that has a military blockade. This movie is very good about trying to give you all the information that you need in order to process the thing that you're seeing. The problem is that we just spent 15 minutes talking about an opening crawl that goes by in 20 seconds.
Exactly. You're supposed to catch all that.
Yeah, hopefully we've caught this. And in this exchange that goes on, they say the Chancellor's ambassadors are here.
Mm-hmm.
They don't say they don't say the Jedi are here.
Right.
So the Chancellor has told the Trade Federation that ambassadors are coming, but he hasn't specified.
He hasn't put all those cards on the table.
Yeah, that it's Jedi Knights. And when we finally meet our 2 Jedi Knights, the movie tries to very quickly kind of establish, because once again we're relying on the familiar.
Right.
It kind of goes with, in a way, cop show tropes.
Mm-hmm.
Because we get our 2 characters right away. Older guy, grizzled, beard. Younger guy, fresh-faced, short haircut. And and they immediately sort of disagree on what's going on in the situation. I have a bad feeling about this. They hit you with the most familiar line in Star Wars.
Yep.
right away.
Right off the bat.
And the exchange that they're having, the rookie says, boy, gosh, this sure doesn't sit too well with me. Forget about it, kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been here before.
Yeah. He's like, at the academy, they taught me that I should do such and such. You got to trust your instincts.
Yeah. Listen here, Rook. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. They're the rookie and the veteran are the 2 characters that we're getting. Like right away, they've let us know, like they're using the language of movies with, I had an acting teacher who used to say, when you go through a script, especially if it's something like for TV, figure out what cliches are in the script. Because writers use them all the time over and over again. It's not a bad thing. We use cliches because they work, because people recognize them.
It communicates effectively.
Yeah, that's who we've got. We've got the veteran and the rookie. The rookie, we find out, is young Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That's right.
They make sure that he says it very, very early on.
Say the name. Say it very
once again, it's a prequel. We have to know what's going on with the other films.
That Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I love in this one part of this scene, pretty early on, they realize something doesn't feel right. Something's off. He kind of says, he makes that line, but they're suspicious. They've been sent on a secret mission. Like there's all these things that are telling you.
You should have been suspicious already. Yeah.
You should be suspicious. Just the nature of what you're doing. You should be careful. But it also, there's the dum-dum moment where they get served drinks and they don't hesitate to drink those drinks.
I know. And that seems a little careless.
Yeah, there's a part of me that goes,
Yeah.
they could have just taken care of this right away. But, I guess with your Jedi poisoning sensing abilities, you just went ahead and went for it.
Well, yeah, and it's, and Obi-Wan asks him, like, so how do you think this is going to go?
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon goes, I mean, they're chicken shits, kid. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be short.
It's going to go fast. Like, Qui-Gon is just really dismissive of this whole, he just doesn't seem to care.
Yeah. He's the grizzled old cop. He's Danny Glover. He's Danny Glover going, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah, exactly. He's very much too old for this shit. He really, really is. And yeah, when we get back to the Trade Federation, they are surprised that 2 Jedi Knights are here.
Right.
Our female C-3PO TC-14, tells them that, the ambassadors are actually Jedi Knights.
Wait, you mean they didn't send accountants to solve this
problem?
problem?
Like, whoa, wait, really? For real? Yeah. Like, and the Viceroy's right-hand man says they're here to force a settlement. He uses the word force.
Yep.
When the Jedi show up, this isn't going to be a back and forth. They're going to tell you how it is. Mm-hmm. This is like, there's an interesting thing that goes on between Newt and his right-hand man, in that his right-hand man is the one who seems to understand how much trouble they're in.
Right.
Where Newt has his mind, he's thinking about his money and not thinking enough about the risks. So they won't even go into the same room as the Jedi. Because what we know about Jedi is that they control minds and they're really good with swords. There's a good reason to hesitate. One of the funny things is that when the droid does come in with tea, Qui-Gon's just like, I don't know why we've been waiting so long. Like, dude, it's been like 30 seconds.
Exactly. You haven't been here that long.
He's so impatient.
Yeah.
And they note that, they're unusually nervous about this. And it's like, really, you think?
Yeah,
like,
that.
You guys are here. Like, of course they're nervous about this.
The secret ninja assassins have showed up to solve things. They might be nervous.
I mean, that is funny. But at the same time, like you've said, they're picking up, like, okay, what he says is it's weird that they're this nervous about a trade dispute. Like, it feels like what's going on is not actually what's going on. The movie is called The Phantom Menace. It's, we get into what is this mysterious thing kind of right away. That's the initial question is what's really going on.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon again, he refers to this trade dispute, one in which warships are blockading a planet, which is an act of war. He calls it, he's like, this is trivial. This is what he says. Something as trivial as this bull. What am I doing out here for this bullshit? And the Trade Federation indeed has something up their sleeve. Once again, the movie just goes right along. And so they talk to their mysterious bad guy, Lord Sidious, who is the Emperor from Return of the Jedi. It's the same guy, the same robes, the same voice, the same lower half of the face.
Yeah,
that's just who it is. And but he's being referred to as Lord Sidious. He's the Emperor, but he's not in control. We don't really know who he is yet. But once again, Newt's right-hand man is just like, we gotta, like, they sent Jedi. Yeah. We gotta get out of this. Like, we're done.
Right.
And is, immediately dismissed for doing that. But then what Lord Sidious says to Newt Gunray is, we have to accelerate our plans. Begin landing your troops. It's just like, so the plan was that you were going to take over this planet, apparently. And it's just like, again, it happened so quickly. It's a piece of information you can miss. That it's not, they have a strategy that they're implementing. And the Jedi showing up was not one of the things that they anticipated happening. So it's just like, oh crap. What do we okay, well, I guess we just gotta go. Like things are happening much faster than we initially wanted them to. So, and this is also where we hear another phrase that kind of gets mocked a lot. It's like, yes, is this legal? And Lord Sidious says, I will make it legal.
Exactly.
Meaning that Lord Sidious has some influence in the Republic.
Mm-hmm.
He's someone who's on the inside.
That's right.
The invasion of Naboo is an inside job. Yeah. So actually there's someone in the Republic who's responsible for what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jedi are not aware that this is what's going on.
That's right. I love this comment that goes along with that from Michael. He just says somehow Palpatine was around.
Somehow he was just there.
That's right. It's a great play on what we get in the sequel trilogy with Palpatine returned. At this point, he's just around.
That's right. And so then pretty much exactly 5 minutes into the movie is when he says that they're going to kill the Jedi.
Right.
So like about 5 minutes into the movie, we get our action scene. Things kick off. We get lightsabers. We have a bunch of, interestingly, we see that these troops are all droids.
Mm-hmm.
We just find out the Jedi are really just merciless killing machines. They just mow through these droids like it's nothing. So yeah, the poison gas doesn't kill them. The droids didn't kill them. The Trade Federation are panicking. Newt's right-hand man says to him, like, have you ever encountered a Jedi before, sir?
Mm-hmm.
Because Newt's just like, do this, do that, do the other thing. And his right-hand man is just like, none of it is going to work. We are so we're so screwed. I told you we should have given up on this.
You should have listened to me.
Because it turns out, the Jedi have this very fearsome reputation. And they're just carving up battle droids. They've got swords that can stop bullets and cut through anything. They're just going right through these blast doors, things that have been established in other Star Wars movies that you just can't get through. And they're just hacking right through it. And this was something that came up in the Book of Boba Fett recently too. It's just like, why don't you start with the droids that have shields? It seems to really be your most shields are like the most powerful technology in ground conflict in Star Wars. For whatever reason, they don't get used a whole lot.
Yes.
Someone pointed out to me on Twitter that, but if you play Battlefront, everyone's got, because what do you know? It's really effective.
Turns out it works pretty well.
But so they have to escape, and then the Jedi they tell us what their next objective is. We've got to warn the Naboo. They refer to the people of Naboo as the Naboo, and we have to contact the Chancellor, the guy who sent us here. We have to let him know that things are way worse.
Turns out it didn't work.
They are. We have information that nobody else does now, that there's an army that's ready to land on this planet, that they're completely hostile, like things have gone really, really bad. And of course the rookie has a smart ass comment about this, negotiation.
That's right.
Sure. I really like how Ewan McGregor kind of really picked up on Alex Guinness's very snarky way of saying.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the next thing that happens is that the Newt Gunray talks to the Queen of Naboo. We're in a fairy tale, so we have our first
gotta be a queen.
Yeah, and she is dressed in a way that we have never seen in a Star Wars movie before. She is dressed very ornately and regally and richly. We're used to seeing a very utilitarian kind of dystopian Star Wars, where people are either the peasants or they're part of this horrible military machine, and there's kind of no in between. This is the first real, even the princess in Star Wars is rather is very kind of civilian looking, but this queen is really really something else. And also, like Leia, she's very young, but she's immediately established as this person of wealth and influence just in the way that she looks. Now the chancellor has told her that he sent ambassadors.
Right.
So presumably the chancellor, one of the reasons he sends the ambassadors is he's trying to keep a lid on things. Like, Naboo, take it easy. I'm handling this situation.
Everybody just be cool.
It's possible that because he's told the Naboo outage to try and keep a lid on it, that this crisis that's happening is also bad for him in some way. That maybe there's going to be some blowback from this. That's why he's trying to control the situation. He's trying to also keep Naboo from making a huge stink by telling them that he's handling the situation.
Right.
And the Queen says to the Viceroy after he denies, like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. She says, beware, Viceroy, like the Federation has gone too far this time. So really this is an ongoing thing.
That's right. The Federation has been a problem before.
The Federation has been an issue has been in these kinds of disputes with the Republic before. And this is just the one that's gone too far. A war is starting. But it's just a little line that lets us know there is a whole lot of history behind what's happening here. Well, we're not seeing the event. We're seeing the straw that broke the camel's back right now. That's why it's not like the Trade Federation at the very first dispute, decided to start landing armies. Like, nah, this has been going on for a long time, and they've finally had enough, and they're finally going to take it this far. And yeah, the Queen has like a privy council in the way that we're kind of used to seeing with monarchs and in history and in films and TV. She has a small circle of people.
Council.
She has the small council, just like the Queen of England did.
There you go.
And interestingly, on the hologram, she's talking to the Emperor. She's, it's very clearly the same guy. He's got the same voice. It's the same actor, the same lower half of the face. It's just like, oh, we found out who the Trade Federation's man on the inside is. He is this guy, Palpatine, who's being addressed as a senator.
Right.
He's actually the representative of Naboo to the Republic, with the Queen being its domestic ruler. He's actually the one working with the Trade Federation on this deal. He's kind of selling out his planet.
Yes.
But what's in it for him, we really don't know right now. What kind of deal does he have going with Trade Federation? We don't know. But the communications get fuzzed out, just like Newt Gunray told us they were going to do. And one of her counselors knows what's up right away. He's like, they're going to land armies. Right now.
They come.
They're going to do it now. We're in serious trouble. We find out that the captain, Panaka, refers to the Trade Federation. He's like, no, the Federation wouldn't do that. They'd lose their trade franchise.
Guess what? They don't give a shit.
Yeah. Franchise is a word that really doesn't make any sense here. The word that would make more sense is charter. It's not like the Trade Federation is running a McDonald's. They're
corporate's not going to come kick them out.
But like what the line is trying to get across is that the Trade Federation is only able to do business the way they do because the Republic lets them. And if they were to invade us, then they would no longer be allowed to do that. There's no way they're going to land an army.
It's kind of like the parental equivalent of a parent counting for their child, and when they get to 10, they still just keep counting because they didn't actually do anything.
Yeah. And he also says that our security volunteers aren't going to be able to do anything about this.
Volunteers. That's key.
Yeah, so they have some kind of volunteer defense force, right? The Trade Federation has this army of droids that he refers to as being battle hardened. So the Trade Federation has used their armies to enforce their will, probably on the planets they control, which would lead me to believe that the systems of the Trade Federation may not particularly be happy about being a part of the Trade Federation.
Right.
But that it also suggests that the Republic does not have its own military. that the militaries of all these systems or federations or member worlds are all up to themselves. And in Naboo's case, they have a small volunteer military that is going to be completely outclassed. So it's like, what? Oh, Naboo really is the perfect target for the Trade Federation trying to pull something like this off, because they can do it so easily. They can do it so quickly. And also, Naboo has a queen who's very young and says things like, I will not condone a course of action that will lead us to war when someone has declared war on you already.
Yeah. War's here already. Sorry.
War is already here, lady.
Yeah.
I
Your
hate
ability to make a
this
choice in this situation does not exist.
This has already gone bad. And so the invasion of Naboo starts at 10 minutes into the film. We got there. But yeah, our first 5 minutes got us to the Jedi being in a fight with the Trade Federation. Our next 5 minutes has got us to the point to where the Federation is landing its ships. So like, look how much has happened in the first, look how long we've been talking about the first 10 minutes of the film. Yes. How many things there are to take in. As Rick McCallum would say, it's so dense.
It's
dense. Not that the movie is confusing or incomprehensible. It's that the movie moves very fast with a lot of information. Hard to take in on your first viewing in a theater. And yeah, we really get our first looks at Naboo during that 5-minute chunk of the film, because we've seen their capital city, which is built in this very beautiful Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, sort of like neoclassical, like roaring 20s style architecture. It's very beautiful. It's very picturesque. The people are all very, very nicely dressed. This seems to be a place where people are pretty wealthy. The planet, interestingly, looks like a big park or nature preserve. The Trade Federation are landing their ships, and we're not seeing really fields or settlements or anything like that. It's just a big forest full of wild creatures.
Yes.
So like maybe Naboo is Naboo some kind of luxury planet? Do they import a lot of stuff from the Trade Federation, and the Trade Federation is mad that the tariffs mean they are making less money? It could be something like that. That's maybe a minor detail.
Sure.
But it establishes that the Naboo, the humans who are living on this planet, are a very well-off people.
Yes.
They don't seem to be working particularly hard for the privilege that they're enjoying, right? Maybe it's kind of a luxury planet, like, like Andorra, or, one of these like small, like European kingdoms that have a small population and a lot of money,
right?
Like a little principality. So yeah, the Trade Federation know that the Jedi have escaped. There's a short little exchange like, keep a lookout for them. And it's kind of funny though, because the very next thing that happens is Qui-Gon is running from these tanks,
right?
That don't even notice he's there. Yeah. Like, yeah, we'll keep a lookout for them, but then like,
we got it.
This guy. The way that the movie pulls it off is that he's running in like this herd of animals, so maybe droids aren't perceptive enough to know the difference.
It's just one big life form.
Yeah, between Qui-Gon and this weird frog/elk thing that's running along next to him. And yeah, then we meet Jar Jar Binks, who Qui-Gon, the veteran, immediately just hates, just for no reason. He just immediately dismisses this guy, insults his intelligence.
The ability to speak does not make
Jar Jar points out to him, dude, I'm speaking your language. You're on my planet. Exactly. And I'm speaking in your language, and you're calling me an idiot.
Yeah. And Qui-Gon just doubles down and says,
just immediately dismisses him too. Yeah, because it's something in Star Wars is that, the people in charge are usually humans, and they usually have English accents.
Exactly.
The Jedi, like, there's a bit of like a class thing here, and the Jedi are kind of part of this ruling class. They're acting mysteriously kind of as instruments of the Republic, even though they're not elected. They're kind of a monastic knightly order that answers to the executive commander without regular people knowing about it.
Yep.
It's kind of and sort of seems like they do whatever they want. He comes to this planet that presumably he's never been to before, meets one of the locals, and immediately goes, "Fuck off! You're an idiot. You don't know what you're doing.
You're dumb. Get out of here."
Yeah, like me, one of the people in charge, knows what I'm doing. Go away.
It's weird. It almost has that weird British imperialism thing that we're talking about over and over again.
It really does, and that's the British imperialism, like late 19th century, lead up to World War I stuff.
Yep.
is kind of all over this movie.
We're up here. The rest of you dum-dums are down there.
And it's like that is the kind of stuff that led up to World War I. And like one of the things that the invasion of Naboo really reminds me of is the Opium War that happened between England primarily, but also the rest of Europe, because they just kind of piled on to it. Sure. And China, because there was the trade going on, that was the East India Trading Company with China, which was this very large nation that at that time was doing okay. But the thing is that China was this very self-sufficient nation. It was really, really large. They didn't need anything that the East India Company had. And so, but they had stuff that the East India Company wanted. They had silks and they had tea and they had this like exotic stuff that was worth money in the core, but they were having to fork over currency for it, silver. And this is back before fiat currency. The currency is a physical object. You can run out of it.
Yes, it goes away. It goes away.
This was a trade imbalance. It was the Chinese. They're giving us a bad deal. It's the worst deal anyone's ever seen. I imagine someone could have been saying at that time.
For sure.
And the inciting incident is when what the East India Company figures out. What they can sell in China is opium, because that's grown in India. China doesn't grow opium, and they can sell it. However, it's illegal to do that in China because opium, which is a medicinal drug, it was found out that you could smoke it, and thus it could be abused, and it started to cause an opioid crisis in China. And China's executive commander, their emperor, said, this shit is now illegal. We are no longer importing any of it. So the East India Company starts smuggling it. Or like their affiliates who are working with them. There was probably some arms length stuff, if I remember correctly. But some guys get caught. All of the opium gets seized. And the Chinese burn it. They just destroy it. So this is potentially a bad situation because you've got each side has a military. England, their actual government, their navy checks out. They intervene in the situation. They go, okay, you can keep the opium and burn it. The government of England is going to pay the East India Company for their losses. But then what they said was, this financial loss is a casus belli. It gives us a reason to go to war. This was enough money that it justifies us going to war with China. China did not have the advanced military that England did, and it was this massively one-sided conflict where not only England, but several other countries who also wanted to do business in China but were having trouble with it, just sort of piled on, and they just beat the absolute shit out of China. And then they forced the Chinese to sign what are referred to as a series of unequal treaties that basically said, okay, guys, the war was our fault. We're sorry that you had to invade us, and we're going to give you more access to our ports. You're going to be allowed to run some things over here. And also, here's a bunch of money compensating you for the financial loss that you took going to war against us and beating the crap out of us. Awful. It's this really, really terrible event that absolutely crushes China for a very long time after that. A lot of common people end up leaving China and taking these awful indentured servitude contracts. in countries like the United States, building railroads and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And like, you know, this age of European empires, these guys were also desperate for China because they were at all of these different rivalries with each other. Everything was held together by this complex system of debt and like difficult diplomatic agreements. And something like World War I happening was kind of inevitable. And the Opium War was this conflict that happened kind of on the way there. And the whole thing of this economic loss gives us a reason to go to war is kind of what the Trade Federation is doing with Naboo. They're like, we're taking a significant enough of loss here that we're considering it material in such a way that military action is justified. So here we come. Anyway, and so we've got and so we have Jar Jar, the first like indigenous person of one of these like non-core worlds that we're meeting. He's immediately dismissed as being stupid and backwards. After all, he doesn't really look like them. He doesn't talk like them, etc. Interestingly, Obi-Wan has been found and is being chased and is rescued. And like the first thing that Obi-Wan takes a look at Jar Jar and goes, "What's this?"
What's this thing?
He doesn't say who's this.
Correct. What's
like
this?
Like even the rookie is just immediately like, you know, they're going to dismiss him until he points out to them that he can be useful to them. He's like, you know, you really should just hide because that's what we did. Like the safest place you could be is where I'm from, which is this city that's under this city under the water. I'm not supposed to take you there, but I'm already. Oh, right. I'm not supposed to take you there. And then they basically threaten him until he does.
Right.
They intimidate him into taking them to the secret city that they're not supposed to know about, which is interesting. These guys shouldn't know. These humans, they're humans. Like the Naboo are. Interesting that the planet is called Naboo. The humans are called Naboo.
Right.
Jar Jar's people who are actually from there are not called the Naboo.
Yeah, imagine that.
It lets us know it kind of lets us know what's going on this planet.
Exactly.
And yeah, we get down to the hidden city and it's actually kind of technologically advanced. The Gungans live in air bubbles. So they're underwater, but underwater isn't their natural habitat. They're good swimmers and everything, but they don't have gills. They breathe air and they walk around on 2 feet. The Gungans are surface dwellers who are hiding from the humans. They've been driven under here in one way or the other, and this is where they are hiding out. And like the Republic doesn't appear to have any relationship to them. They don't really seem to know much about who the Jedi are. They just know there's the Naboo, and we don't like them. But like one could assume that the Gungans don't have any communications with the Republic at all.
They're kind of fine to just hide out and do their thing.
They're it's as
they're kind of like the Wakandans of Star Wars. They're like, just leave us alone. We're going to stay down here with our magic orbs and other things.
Just like, okay, like fine. If you're going to be dicks about it, sure, we'll be down
fine.
here.
We'll take our toys and go, or take our technology and go into the water.
Okay, cool.
Cool. Call me when you need help.
Yeah, and so we finish our next 15-minute chunk here.
Yeah.
When they get to the ruling council of this underwater city, we're at about 50 minutes in. And it's so funny because like their boss, Brian Blessed, says to them, "We don't like the Naboo," essentially because they think they're superior to us. And Qui-Gon basically says, "Yes, we are. Now help us out." Like Obi-Wan goes so far to tell them like, well, yeah, but what affects them affects you. Like you have to get that right, you moron.
Yeah, you understand that.
So eventually they just trick them.
They just impose their will on them. As
they have been exactly doing. They're just doing what the Naboo do to them, which is just make them give them something. And so then they finally have their way out of this. You know, their whole thing was, their objective was warn the Naboo, contact Chancellor Valorum. They've not managed to do either of those things at
They
this
haven't
point.
done any of this.
They're
So
way
these two
behind.
super secret spies are really not great at their job.
No, they are way behind the ball. Things are not going well. And yeah, we go back to Lord Sidious talking to the Trade Federation. He's informed them that he has the Senate bogged down in procedures.
Right.
So
he's giving
the
them
guy
all
on
busy
the
work.
inside, the guy on the inside, he's just like, look, I'm making sure the Republic doesn't know what's going on here yet. You know, it's not, he mentions, I believe he first mentions the treaty here. She's young and I want the treaty signed. She's young. She's naive. How hard could it be? Figure it and get it out. I'll keep stalling, but you need to get this done. Because so the idea is like the Opium War. We get them to sign an unequal treaty that says what you're doing here is fine. And then we take that back to the Senate and say, see, problem solved. Because the Senate won't have gotten anything done.
Yeah.
And basically Naboo will just be your planet now.
Yeah.
It'll just be a part of the Trade Federation. And then we have all of our fish hijinks that go on, which is the bongo is one of the strangest parts in the Phantom Menace to me, because it's one of the parts of the movie that I'm not entirely sure what we're supposed to be getting out of it. Right. It seems to be there just so that we know how the Jedi get from point A to point B. But weirdly, there's two different sequences of it. There's the sequence where Jar Jar talks about being clumsy. That seems to be the reason for the scene, is to establish that he's a boob, as if we hadn't seen that before.
Right.
Then there's the scene with Lord Sidious, and then there's another scene where the ship breaks down, and then the big fish thing happens.
Yes.
I don't know what we're supposed to.
Yeah, I don't know what
exactly
we get from
why
that.
The underwater portions of the film are here, other than just for we need some kind of thing with a vehicle to be happening at this point of the movie to keep people keep someone who's getting bored with the politics interested. We need a new kind.
We got to drive somewhere.
There needs to be something action-y happening, like the chase scene with the two fish. I think that's the reason that this is here, because it's this is happening about 20 minutes in. Like in the 5-minute chunks, something big needs to happen every single time. And I think that's what it is. And then finally, the very last part of this is we see the invasion of Naboo happening and of the capital city happening. The Trade Federation just marches right in to no resistance whatsoever. They've captured the Queen. And the Jedi are nowhere to be seen. They basically failed at this point.
Correct.
Not only did they not warn the Naboo, but the Naboo's capital city has been captured.
Yeah.
And then we finally solidly get what the plan is. That the Queen is going to sign a treaty that will legitimize the occupation. So really the first 22 minutes of the movie sort of establishes why the events of this movie are happening. Gives us some key information about the Republic, kind of why things are unstable, this weird situation that the Jedi are in. Gives us kind of an idea of the politics of it, how this Republic is functionally already an empire. And it tries to do this as quickly as possible, because we need to get to escaping the planet with the Queen and going to Tatooine.
We've got to get to all the other cool guys that have been teased.
That's right. And so the first 20 minutes of this movie ends up being so dense.
Yes.
Because so much stuff.
Rick McCallum nails it.
Yeah, he nails it. So much stuff has to happen before you can meet Anakin Skywalker, which is the entire point of
That's why we're here. That's why we've shown up. I love that. And it is. Dense is the word, and Rick McCallum nailed it, which Rick McCallum pretty much always nailed it when he talked about things.
Yeah.
So as we go from that, we have a second and a third question. And I think that in the second question, if the first question is, what is the text telling us? It's that literal interpretation. The second question that I usually use is, what is the text asking of us? And for me, this is always kind of, what is the inspirational interpretation of these minutes? What are the things that you kind of get on an inspirational level from looking at this part of the movie?
It's sort of what I feel like the movie is trying to get you to like kind of imagine beyond the actual events of it, is that, yeah, the problems that this really large society is having have been around for a very, very long time.
Right.
And interestingly, the good old days that Obi-Wan is talking about in that monologue in Star Wars, he may not have actually been alive for them.
Right.
By the time Obi-Wan is on the scene, he's a young guy, and things are breaking down.
Yeah, things have already started to go sideways.
Yeah, as an old man, he's looking back and going, things used to be better before. And then we watch the prequels and we're like, did they really?
Were they though?
Because this doesn't look so great. It's something that's so interesting about George Lucas to me is how interested he is in his films in dystopias, but like in like dystopia, like nostalgic ones though, kind of, because like THX 1138, it's this incredibly oppressive dystopian society,
right?
But it looks really cool.
Like,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's just like, ooh, it's the really slick technocratic future. Oh, except it's actually a nightmare when you get under the surface of it. And like American Graffiti is this movie about kind of the magic of being in high school. Of our parents, George Lucas is the same age as both your parents and mine.
Correct.
It's like, what was it like to be the first generation of teenagers? And kind of this seemingly idyllic time after World War II, with the cars were cool. There's, the cars and music and like the whole like good times, small town stuff. But it's also just like, but yeah, you're in Modesto. It's a place that people want to get out of. And like, how do you get out of Modesto? It's not. Is it really where you want to be? The end of the movie, like, oh God, the end of American Graffiti. It hits you. It like hits you so hard because you've had this kind of like our childhood is over thing. Ron Howard really wants to marry his high school sweetheart, and stay forever. Richard Dreyfuss wants to kind of find out what it's like to be outside the law. Maybe that's where the answers are. He's going to hang out with the pharaohs. John just wants to race his car and be cool forever.
Just wants to race.
But that doesn't go. But then there's this huge crash, and they all realize at the end of the movie we're teenagers, but our lives could be over at any moment. And Terry, who just like wants to get a girl and be like the other cool guys with the cool car, and he's kind of renting his prestige. He kind of looks at these other guys and sees that they don't know what the hell's going on either. And then the ending card of the movie is, well, Ron Howard, he doesn't marry his high school sweetheart. He ends up back in Modesto selling insurance. Right. Richard Dreyfuss runs away to Canada because he gets drafted. He can never go home.
Gets drafted, yeah.
Yeah. John dies in a drunk driving accident, and Terry gets killed in Vietnam.
Right.
Fuck. There's this nostalgic veneer over this really terrible time.
Really, yeah.
And there's a bit of this in the Phantom Menace too. There's a lot of pomp and majesty and stuff going on, but underneath it, the world is not working very well.
That's right.
A lot of people are suffering and being treated very badly. One of the things that's so interesting about this movie is that like George Lucas really likes ensemble.
Yes.
He likes having more than one character to see the world through. But figuring out who the protagonist of the Phantom Menace is not easy.
No, it's not. No, it's not. And again,
it's part of Qui-Gon, because you can't be on his page. He's the veteran. He's not the guy who you can see the movie through. It's not Dirty Harry. It's Star Wars.
Right.
It's not really Obi-Wan because he's not in the movie very much, actually.
Yeah.
Like he spends most of the movie trying to fix a car It's not Anakin. He's a child. He's a kid.
Right.
It might actually be Padme because she's the only person who has a very strong character arc, because she's this person of privilege who learns that this
things aren't so great
that she lives in, that she thought was very peaceful and just, and that there were enough resources for everyone. She finds out that none of these things were true.
Right.
And then she decides that she's just like, you know what? I have to do something about it. I can't just sit back and be safe like I have my whole life. I have to go back in and do something. And because like Padme is the person who understands that veneer of nostalgia over the problems of the world, like she's the one who can't be satisfied with that. That kind of makes her that I think and the fact that she realizes it is the thing that makes her kind of a protagonist, and just the fact that this is how the world works is very much what I think something that we're supposed to be getting out of the Phantom Menace.
Absolutely.
And very much in the title, things are not really what they seem to be.
Yeah. And I think for me, the thing that I jotted down looking at it from an inspirational standpoint ties exactly into what you say, and especially through the lens of Padme, which is we're being asked to feel for others, and we're being asked to see below the surface. We're being asked to see beyond the shine and the pretty costumes and the great lush jungle and the fancy underwater bubbles, which is a way for people who have been pushed down and told they're less than. That's a defense mechanism. It's them hiding out because they were told you don't belong here, which of course is something we see in our world all the time now. And so if I'm taking, in this text, what is the inspiration I'm taking from it? And it really will tie into the third question, the practical, where do I go from here? How do I apply this in my life? And I'll just lead into that with my answer, and then I'd love to hear yours, is what is the text asking of me, which is that practical, how do I apply it in my life? It's asking me to look around. It's asking me to pay attention. It's asking me to see beyond my comfortable middle-class American existence in life as a white guy who kind of hits all the boxes and privilege and all the things that we know so much about in this country, or that Padme knew growing up being who she was. She came from privilege. She came from lake houses and summer camps and laying on the sand with Paolo and all these other things, to being a queen and to having the costumes and the trappings, but looking up and realizing things are bad. And I'm up here, in my fancy existence, in my bubble, but we have Gungans. We have, our own people who are being mistreated and pushed out. And so I think for me, the practical question, the practical takeaway I have in these minutes is to look beyond the surface, to look into my daily life, to carry on and see beyond. Oh, that looks cool. But, and even on a one-to-one basis, I talk a lot about mental health. I have a lot of, personal experiences with family members and people like that. That's as much of it as anything too. Look beyond the surface. They seem like they're fine, but find a chance to see, is somebody okay? Is there something else I can be doing based on the privilege I have, based on whatever my station in life is? Is there something else there? That's my inspirational, that's my takeaway. That's my practical application, is to look around, is to pay attention. In these moments and what you see, do you have a practical to kind of go along with that?
I really do agree with that, because I think that like we're saying, the text also speaks to that too. It's the first conversation that the Jedi have in this film. Is the veteran tells the rookie, you need to really pay attention to what's right. You really need to see what's happening around you. Don't get preoccupied with what Master Yoda told you or what you think might happen in the future. You really need to, it's just like, you really need to see what's going, going on. Because like people not seeing what's going on is what leads to so many of the tragic events in Star Wars. Absolutely. This guy, Senator Palpatine, no one understands what he's up to until it's too late, because they're not looking past the surface of it. And just like it's another reason that I think of Padme as being the protagonist of the film, is that
Sure.
like so many people who live in the Imperial Core now, so many of us don't realize that slavery does still exist in the world.
Right.
Like, it's just like, oh, it's because Padme says what all of us would say. Oh, well, that's not legal anymore. It's like, yeah, you're right. It's not legal anymore. Things aren't, but there are people who don't follow the law, or there are people who are supposed to enforce the law who don't care.
Or those laws got changed into something else. It became poll taxes, and it became literacy tests for voting. It became, that slavery isn't slavery, but it is. It's economic slavery. It's, there's all the other ways that, the ones at the top figured out a way to still do it. And it's kind of like the Trade Federation. Okay, so they're going to reject my charter. Screw you. I've got other ways to still do what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I can basically just march in here, take the place over, get them to sign a treaty, and I did nothing wrong.
Right.
I didn't break the law because
break the law.
The paperwork
I just did what I wanted.
Yeah, because I filed the paperwork correctly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, because like Qui-Gon gets talked about. It's just like Obi-Wan says something like, you'd be one of the guys running things if you weren't like this.
Yeah.
But Qui-Gon's just like, those guys, he's basically just like, those guys don't know what's up. They don't actually pay it. They're kind of in they're part of the status quo, and I'm not actually, and Qui-Gon may not actually be interested in that. Because again, Obi-Wan's thing about the Jedi Knights were the protectors of peace and justice. And we see in the prequels that the Jedi, that may be one of their ideals.
Right.
But if all they're doing is upholding the status quo, which is what the Chancellor wants them to do, that's the relationship they have with the government, is to just keep things running smoothly, then the peace and the justice stuff may go by the wayside.
Yeah. And we see, of course, when we get to Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, they just become a part of the Imperial or the Galactic Senate military. They become the generals.
They immediately do. The Jedi start the war.
Yeah.
They start the war. That's something that I think sometimes we forget when we're watching Attack of the Clones, is that the Republic starts the war by invading. They just invade Geonosis.
Yep.
Like, a guy just goes there on his own, based on his investigation or whatever. And they send an entire army to rescue 3 people.
Yep.
Like,
including all of the rest of the psychic wizards with swords.
Yeah, that's it. Like, it gets out of hand so fast.
I do like this as a final comment from Michael. For real, Oppo Rancisis just wants to be eating all the time. Peter, this has been a fabulous conversation. I have really enjoyed this, and I could sit and talk just about one-to-one real-world history comparisons in Star Wars for hours. So we may have to do that again somewhere down the road and try to bring out some other great comparisons, great connections, because I love that kind of stuff. Before we get out of here, is there anything that you can plug? Is there anywhere anybody can find you? Like I said, I know you're periodically on Twitter, but you see it for the wasteland that most of the rest of us see it as most of the time too. So
I am on Twitter. If you want to say hi to me on Twitter, you do have to follow me first, because my account is private. Not because anything bad happened. My account is private just so that when I make dumb jokes about Star Wars, I don't get 500 people taking me very seriously, telling me why I'm wrong. It's just
totally fair.
After a while that gets old.
That's right. Self-defense.
Yeah, it's just like, and also like, I kind of think of it as taking myself out of the numbers game, because it's just like, once you turn off retweets, and like, you don't have a post that does numbers or anything like that, and you don't have people who you don't know liking a tweet that you made, it's like, you'll say something funny, and then like 10 or 15 people go, oh, that's pretty cool. That's a reasonable number of people.
Absolutely.
To tell me to say that. I don't need thousands of people approving of any of my thoughts. Just a few people. That's good. That's a decent thing.
I don't need that kind of support. I don't need them to encourage me.
No. That's more people than I need to laugh at anything that I say. So yeah, but if you would like to interact with me on Twitter, do a follow request at Townley Peter, and if we have accounts that we follow in common, like yours, then I'll approve it and we'll be online buds. So
absolutely perfect. Well, this has truly been a fantastic conversation. It's been a pleasure for me to have you on. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
Any day I get to talk way too much about Star Wars is always fun.
I totally agree. And thank you to everybody who watched along with us. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing. And until we are together again, may the Force be with you always.